everyone, welcome back to Unveiling Buddhism. In episode 40, we talked about this ascetic named Upaka, who the Buddha met on purpose while heading to Deer Park in Varanasi. But instead of engaging, Upaka just brushed him off and walked away. So what happened next? Stay tuned for the juicy details.
Upaka was heading home when he ran into the Buddha. He lived in a little village and was the spiritual teacher for the hunter community. They looked up on him, even built him a hermitage and gave him daily alms. Over time, Upaka started to believe his own hype and thought he was pretty important in the spiritual game.
That explains why he had such a big ego. So what went down when he got back to the village?
Upaka settled back into his chill routine, and time just kind of flew by. Then one day, the chief hunter took all his guys out for a long hunting trip. While they were gone, Upaka stopped by his place for alms like he usually did. But this time, things felt different. When Chapa, the chief hunter's daughter, came over with some carefully prepared food, Upaka was totally struck by her beauty. It hit him hard and sparked a strong desire inside him. Feeling overwhelmed and trying to pull himself together, Upaka quickly accepted the alms and rushed back to his hermitage. Once he got home though, he couldn't shake off his desire for Chapa. He couldn't eat or sleep at all. 7 days later, the chief hunter came back from the forest and asked how Upaka was doing. Chapa told him that Upaka had only stopped by once and hadn't come back since. Worried, the chief hunter went to check on Upaka, still in his hunting gear. When he got to the hermitage, he was taken aback by Upaka's surprising request to marry Chapa. Feeling a little bit uneasy, the chief hunter couldn't help but respect Upaka. So he asked politely, "Do you have any way to support yourself?"
Wow, I can just picture the chief hunter's reaction. Upaka, who was seen as a respected ascetic, went from being enlightened to creepy in no time. I mean, who wouldn't be freaked out by the teacher having a thing for a young woman they've watched grow out?
Upaka confessed that he didn't have any skills to make a living. The chief hunter frowned, clearly troubled, and said, "If you don't have any skills, how are you going to handle family affairs? How will you take care of them?" Upaka responded, "I might not have skills, but I can help carry the animals you hunt and sell the meat at the market." The chief hunter was puzzled by Upaka's casual response and thought to himself, well, maybe his teacher has some kind of plan? With that in mind, he reluctantly went along with Upaka's request.
Talk about spiritual blackmail. Upaka's proposal is full of manipulation, and the chief hunter's blind loyalty is really messing with his judgment. This is definitely a recipe for disaster. You know, superstitions can really mess with people's heads and lead them to make some pretty irrational choices. We often ignore our common sense when we blindly believe in something without any logic behind it, and that usually leads to regrets. In this story, the chief keeps putting his trust in Upaka, even though Upaka's behavior is totally out of line for an ascetic. It's a classic case of blind faith or irrational obedience. The chief really should see that Upaka has given up his religious vows and isn't the respectable ascetic he used to be. So what's going to happen next?
At that time, Chapa was about 15, and the idea of marrying Upaka, who was in his late 30s, really freaked her out. But she felt like she couldn't do anything to go against her dad's decision.
Oh, come on, who wouldn't be upset? This is just terrible. A young teenage girl marrying a guy who's twice her age? Instead of looking out for her, her dad is basically giving her away to a middle-aged man who is as old as he is. I'll be furious and heartbroken if I were in her shoes. Forget about age, the differences in maturity and life views are just a recipe for disaster in a marriage.
Precisely, that's why being on the same wavelength mentally is super important in a marriage. Relying just on physical attraction usually doesn't last. So did they actually go through with the marriage?
Yep, they got married, and before long they had a son named Shubhata. But after a few years, Shraddha's respect for Upaka started to slip away. She even began to mock him in a lullaby she sang to their son.
Son of a meat vendor, ex-monk and fool, once a respected monk, now a hunter's burden. Your mother sings to soothe you. Sleep now, my golden boy, sleep.
Oh my, looks like Upaka's ascetic habits made him dodge responsibility too. Being a hunter isn't an easy gig, and he's really becoming a burden, hasn't he?
Well, but Upaka was still pitching in by hauling the carcasses to sell at the market.
Yeah, right, how helpful. That's just volunteering to do 1% of the work to feel relevant. Talk about a redundant son-in-law.
But shouldn't Chapa be nicer instead of using mockery and sarcasm? That kind of talk isn't gonna help their marriage, and is pretty much a form of verbal abuse.
Chapa behavior isn't great, but let's try to see things from her perspective. The lullaby shows that even after having their son, Upaka still hadn't picked up any real skills. On the other hand, Chapa had grown into a responsible mom, worried about how to support the family. With her dad getting older and Upaka not showing any interest in bettering himself, she might have thought that her teasing would push him to step up.
Still, good communication is key to a successful marriage. Negative talk and hurtful language don't really lead to anything good. It would have been better if they had both opened up and had a real conversation to find some common ground.
Maybe Chapa didn't have the same freedoms as women today and couldn't really express her worries. Let's check if she said anything more.
In your cradle adorned with jewels, sleep, my son, pure as gold. But know your father, the last of men. In future, seek liberation and rise above his fate.
Ouch, that must have hurt Upaka deeply. Chapa telling the son that his dad was beneath everyone. She wasn't just making fun of Upaka's spiritual life, she was also comparing that innocent baby to a monk who couldn't even keep his vows. Since kids are usually expected to follow in their dad's footsteps, it was like she was saying her son should be a better ascetic, especially since Upaka had nothing else useful to teach.
I wonder why the chief hunter didn't step in and tell Chapa to chill out with her harsh words.
Isn't it obvious that the chief hunter was also disappointed with him? If not, he would have shut Chapa down for being so disrespectful. Upaka, as an Ajivika ascetic, preached about fate, but his own behavior showed he felt entitled and wasn't accepting of his new life as a hunter.
Looks like Upaka felt pretty unappreciated at home. A lot of marriages fall apart when one person feels undervalued or ignored. Plus, it's clear he didn't enjoy any physical or emotional intimacy in this marriage. I can't help but wonder how much more he can take.
Each time Chapa sang this lullaby, Upaka was deeply hurt. One day, unable to bear the humiliation any longer, he told Chapa, "You think I have no one to rely on? I have a great friend. He is the undefeatable great hero. I will go to him."
Oh boy, it's crazy how this guy clings to his misplaced pride and delusion. He thinks saying he's Buddha's friend makes him important. Why not focusing on improving himself first?
Upaka's pride and self-worth are totally shot. He feels inferior in his own home, where he used to be respected. Now he's getting mocked by the only family he has. He's probably feeling pretty desperate right now.
One thing's for sure, the three of them have different expectations. Chapa and her dad wanted Upaka to step up and become a hunter to help out the family. But he just couldn't bring himself to do it. That's created some serious tension, and if they don't sort it out, things could really fall apart. So did Chapa actually stop after Upaka's outburst?
Even though she knew her words hurt him, Chapa kept teasing him with her song. Eventually, Upaka just couldn't take it anymore and left without saying a word, set out on finding his spiritual friend, the undefeatable great hero.
I think Chapa's high expectations of Upaka come from the financial struggles. Money problems can really mess up a household and put a strain on marriage. So it's important not to let love blind you to the need for financial stability.
After leaving his family, Upaka set off to find Buddha, asking everyone he met about the undefeatable great hero. His journey eventually led him to Jetavana Monastery. Little did Upaka know, Buddha had already expected him and told the monks to send anyone looking for the great hero straight to him. When Upaka finally faced Buddha, he called out, "Glorious Buddha, do you remember me? Your disciple."
My, this guy is such an opportunist. Now that he sees Buddha surrounded by so many disciples, he suddenly recognizes him as a teacher? I mean, before he just called Buddha his friend.
The Buddha replied, "Yes, Upaka, I remember you. Now that you are getting on in years and have seen what life is really like, how about joining my order of monks?"
Back in Buddha's day, the average lifespan for regular folks was about 50 years. So Upaka, being in his early 40s, was already seen as getting up there in age.
Upaka was super eager to join, and the Buddha ordained him and taught him a meditation practice that fit him well. With a lot of hard work, Upaka reached the anagami state. After he passed away, he was reborn in the Suddhavasa pure abode heavens, where he quickly became an arahant and finally achieved liberation.
So what happened to Chapa and their son?
Chapa raised her son, and as he got older, she got tired of the everyday grind too. He ended up following in his grandfather's footsteps, while Chapa became an enlightened Buddhist nun.
Even with all the ups and downs in their everyday lives, Chapa and Upaka went through some serious changes in their later years. Their journeys show us that real fulfillment comes from within, not just from what we achieve on the outside, but from wisdom, compassion, and having a purpose. Here's to Upaka's inspiring story, reminding us what it means to live a good life. Catch us next time on Unveiling Buddhism for more insights on the Buddhist path. Ciao.